This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Let's go to Brian in Jacksonville. Hello, Brian.
I was in a social setting recently with a friend of ours who is really exploring the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And in the midst of the conversation, a former Catholic announced that he was a former Catholic. He and his wife had left. And when this other person, why'd you leave? And he brought up the sex scandal. Of course, I said, well, look, there's no question there were bad priests. And, the church is like Noah's Ark. It's smelly. It's full of manure, but it's the boat to salvation that God gave us. And the church that Christ gave us is the boat to salvation. And so it didn't satisfy him. And I just didn't feel like I had a good answer and would love to know from your perspective what would be a great response to that is charitable but also effective in maybe bringing someone back or just explaining what happened. I don't know. I was at a loss for words.
No, I can understand why, and I share your concern because obviously, if you want to help somebody, it's important to be able to say something that would be meaningful to them. Sometimes it's hard in the moment to know what to do. Let me share with you how I put it. I put it in the first part of my book called Why Be Catholic, and I actually start with the abuse crisis. So let me just share with you a little bit from that book what I say. I say the Catholic Church is a lot like Noah's Ark, immense and capacious. It is also ungainly and lumbering, not built for speed, but for endurance. It causes everyone to stop and stare. Some scoff, thinking it bizarre or comical. Others find themselves drawn to it, longing to get on board. It is freighted with an incredibly diverse array of unruly passengers, some of whom do not get along well with one another. It is also very messy. Try to imagine getting a good night's sleep on the ark. Try to imagine what the ark smelled like inside by the time the floodwaters receded. And yet, if you could go back in time to that fateful day, just as the floodgates opened and the rain really started to come down hard, knowing what you know now about what happened next, you surely would waste no time scrambling aboard the ark, regardless of the noise, stench, messiness, and commotion. This is the Catholic Church I'd like to tell you about. In view of the recent abuse scandals that have convulsed the Church and scandalized the world, it seems right and just to me that to begin my case for the Catholic Church here, amid the uproar and confusion these scandals have wrought. The question, why be a Catholic, demands an answer now more than ever. Scandal has shown its hideous face among believers in every generation of salvation history. This strange, counterintuitive reality is as mysterious as it is disconcerting. The Catholic Church is reeling right now under an avalanche of grave sexual crimes against children, teens, and young adults perpetrated by its own priests and bishops. The only honorable and honest choice is to admit these transgressions and squarely face the consequences. Given the cascade of heinous sex crimes committed by the clergy and moral corruption among the laity of recent decades, how can the Catholic Church possibly claim to be the one true church? As Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger wrote in 2005, he later became Pope Benedict XVI, he said, how much filth there is in the church, and even among those who in the priesthood ought to belong entirely to him. He compared the Catholic Church to a boat about to sink, a boat taking in water on every side. The old adage is true, a rising tide lifts all the boats, but the converse is also true, an ebbing tide lowers all the boats. In the ruinous aftermath of the sexual abuse scandals, it is a fact that respect for the Catholic Church is dramatically ebbing away. What's more, a steady stream of media revelations of negligence, worldliness, and even criminal financial malfeasance and similar delinquencies on the part of priests and bishops has made the situation even more intolerable. Now, I go on from there, but the point is that as I lay out further in the book, this is, I say, the first chapter in my book called Why Be Catholic, what I'm leading up to here is you are not a Catholic, nor you shouldn't be a Catholic, because you like the priests or the bishops or the Pope. You can dislike your parish priest. Maybe he's weird. Maybe he's negligent. A lot of good priests out there, that's for sure. I know many of them. But there are some who aren't. There's some who are morally corrupt. Bishops, cardinals, this is nothing new in the life of the church. Ask St. Peter Damian, because he wrote a whole book, Liber Gomorensis, which is a book condemning the vice of sodomy among the clergy many centuries ago. So it was a problem even then as it is today. So my point is not that this is new and different. This is more of the same. And yet we don't belong to the church because of any of these people. We belong to the church because of Jesus. It's his church. Jesus said, upon this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So when you become, this is what I would say to your friend, Brian, when you become a believer in Jesus, and you really take him seriously when he said to his apostles, go into the whole world, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, teach them to observe all that I've commanded you. He's saying, bring everybody into this church that he established, which is indeed the Catholic Church. It's a matter of, do you take Jesus seriously? And I would say that to your friend. Do you really take him seriously? Because if you really do, the only sane option you have, the only coherent option you have is to follow Jesus. He says, pick up your cross and follow me if you want to be my disciple. So there are going to be difficulties and problems and scandals, and there were those things even in the New Testament. The scandal of the betrayal of Jesus by Judas, one of his handpicked men, one of the first bishops, or his denial 3 times by St. Peter, who would be the first pope. So we can see scandal even at the very beginning of things, and that should not deter us from saying, even though the members of this church are sinful and prone to infighting and bickering and other problems, that's not why I'm here. I'm here for you, Jesus. I'm here for the bread of life. I'm here for the sacraments. I'm here for, as you put it, Brian, my ticket on the ark of salvation. If the person realizes that, then as bad as the pre-scandals are, and they are bad, it doesn't ultimately matter. When you think about it, I mean, it matters, obviously, and I'm not suggesting that it doesn't matter to the victims or anything. That's not what I'm referring to. What I'm saying is that there is no good reason to leave the Catholic Church if the Catholic Church is established by Jesus. There is no good reason to leave it. So to kind of conclude my long-winded answer to your question, Brian, and I've thought and prayed deeply about this for a long time, and that's where this book, Why Be Catholic, came from, was, how do you respond to people like your friend who say, nah, I'm not going to be a member of that church because look at all these scandals. First of all, deep down inside, that's a cop-out, honestly. When I hear people say that, I really do believe, you're looking for an easy way out. And this is it. You've got, hey, look, I can blame them. I can blame the bishops and priests. So they failed in what they should have done by following the gospel. Therefore, I'm not going to follow the gospel. It's incoherent. It doesn't make any sense. An analogy that comes to my mind is, let's say that your cardiologist is a fat slob and a chain smoker who eats nothing but fast food. In other words, he has the knowledge. He knows the truth about heart health. He knows cardiology. He knows about exercise. He knows about nutrition. He knows you shouldn't smoke. He knows all these things, but he himself doesn't do that. He doesn't live according to what he knows to be true. Why on earth would you or I say, well, to heck with it then? My hypocritical cardiologist, look at him. Therefore, I'm not going to take care of my own heart? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to walk away from the church that Jesus established simply because members of the church who happen to be priests and bishops and cardinals, and yes, even popes over the course of the history of the church, have failed to do their job, have failed morally or failed in some other way. It makes no sense at all to say, therefore, I'm going to fall away. It's about as timely as it gets because these scandals have really been a punch in the gut for a lot of people. But they're not thinking clearly if they think that the solution is to walk away from the church. For what it's worth, if you want to take a look at the book, it's my manifesto on this topic. So thanks for the question. I appreciate it.